you can say a few words about yourself and about your background in NLP, since you were there from the beginning of the days.
Before it had a name. I was there before it had a name. Well, I always say, when people say, how did you come to NLP? I always say, I came to NLP through love, because I was a student at the University of California in Santa Cruz, studying religious studies and anthropology, actually. And I met John Grinder. Whoa. And he was a professor of linguistics there, and well, we fell in love, and so that's why I say I came to NLP through love. And then John gave me a copy of The Structure of Magic before it was published. It was in a manuscript form, and he asked me to read it and tell him what I thought, you know, and I read it, and it wasn't easy to read. It was very like, oh my God. It was sort of a rigor, you know, this sort of mental rigor, which is quite different than anthropology and religious studies, you know, as a study. But I got through it, and I went, wow, you know, people will be able to evolve themselves based on this understanding that you have a surface structure called language, the linguistics, and how that relates to the deeper structure of who we are as human beings in terms of our nervous system, that relationship. And for me, just reading that book at the time, I was able to take some of my experiences that were not, I guess the word would be integrated, but it gave them a place and a way to think about placing them in an integrated way through my system, and that's what I remembered. I wasn't so much thinking about problem solving with it, but it was that awareness that we can evolve ourselves, we can be better, we can bring more potential out of ourselves.
And later you developed your own subject in NLP, and you worked with Robert at the NLPU. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. I mean, with John Grinder, we sort of really punctuated what I call the new coding, the new code. John is continuing to teach the new code. That kind of connected into bringing some of the Bateson work into reality, sort of perceptual positions. It takes two to know one. It takes three to know one. Where's the kernel of truth? Also, I think out of that came the neurological levels that Robert sort of defined, that came out of Bateson's levels of learning. We have, you know, the perceptual positions. It really began to focus more on relationship, what's happening between two people, not just what's happening inside. one person. So for me, that was the next description. That was Turtles All the Way Down, and what that kind of brought. That was the next description. And then in the early 90s, Robert and Todd Epstein had been working together for a number of years. In fact, we were both doing things at the University of California, so Robert and Todd would be over here working, and John and I would be over here working. We'd meet up at lunch and have conversations, right, at the university campus. And Todd said, would you join us? NLPU hadn't been named yet, but it was called Dynamic Learning then. And Todd and Robert said, we have this dream, and, you know, would you come and join us? And I said, well, let me come in and experience what you're doing and make sure that I feel like I can really add my muscle to it in a way that's going to be good for you and good for the group, and, you know, just yeah. So I did a few days that first summer, and then the next year Todd says, last year we were engaged, this year we're getting married. so then sadly Todd passed on within the next couple of years, and then Robert and I developed NLPU over the years, and together wrote the Encyclopedia of Systemic Neurolinguistics, which was fabulous to do, and one of my, I feel an achievement I feel very proud of. I think we were trying to say, look, we are a field. This isn't everything, but look at what's just here between the two of us, you know. And then we did this kind of third description, or third generation idea.
And what is special about the third generation?
I think from my perspective, there's a few things that are special. The one thing, which is part of what we're going to be talking about later, which is this bringing these ideas of different minds. It's interesting, we talk about the mind-body split, we talk about the cognitive mind, the somatic mind now, that with the neuroscience and what they're discovering with other, the
heart,
the
and
heart and the gut, what they're discovering. But I always, from the very beginning of NLP, because I think coming from religious studies background in anthropology and looking at, shamanism and looking at Buddhism and looking at all kinds of, pathways, that I would go, you can't have one without the other, basically.
You can't have the mind without the body.
Yeah. The idea that there's a mind-body separation is only something the mind could think up, right? Because the body knows perfectly well, That's not the way we're put together.
And when I listened to you, you said I had to put my muscle into...
Yeah.
So you're a very kinesthetic person.
Yes.
And I heard that you used to dance.
You
used to be a dancer.
I did dance. I danced a lot in Santa Cruz.
And you still dance. When you are on the stage, you are dance.
Thank you. I feel that. That's the metaphor, dancing with the audience, for sure. I think for me, and there was a point where I realized there was, this is the visual world for us as NLP people. We talk about the visual representation system and the kinesthetic and the auditory, that there was a lot paid towards the visual, and I think that is definitely a kind of artifact of our educational system. I mean, that's where we're taught, how we're taught. This is where the attention is put in the biggest way, from my perspective, and then the words. Right, but words are words. They're not experience. They're a way to talk about experience, right?
Yes.
So, but very little on tone, quite frankly. And it was like the kinesthetic system was more, it was like a system that held emotion, as opposed to a system which thinks, that has memory, which codes and decodes information.
Because a lot of people are... sometimes they speak about the kinesthetics, but actually they mean to speak about feeling.
Yes.
And people don't understand always the difference between the kinesthetics and the feeling. They're the same. And it's very important to...
The difference for me is when people talk about emotion, I go, emotions, except for two, are reflective. So it's how I feel about something.
Okay.
That's not the same as feeling directly. Okay. That's not the same as going, this unit has this vast wisdom, that when I sort of get this out of the way a little bit, in a positive way, or let it kind of melt down and become a member, in a way, of the bigger part of self, there's a lot of knowledge that begins to emerge. But it emerges up, not down.
Like when we are doing the imprinting and we are going backtrack, the body remember. It's not the mind.
No.
The body brings...
The body brings it, exactly.
As people say, but I don't remember. I tell them, don't worry, your body remember, and it will bring it.
Yeah, just like I was saying yesterday about, isn't it amazing, this 5-year-old child can